A line of horses blocked the rising sun. 200 warriors, motionless, mute. Their feathers caught the breeze, but not one man flinched. The wind carried dust between them, and the barn hissing low like a snake too tired to strike. Every rifle was sheathed, but every face was steel. In front stood a child, barefoot, belly empty, hand raised. The same child who had lain near death beneath a salt bush 2 nights before. The same boy now holding the fate of one cowboy in his outstretched fingers. Inside the barn, the cowboy froze, shotgun in hand, sweat running cold along his spine. He didn't know their language, but he knew a standoff when he saw one. This wasn't an ambush. It was a trial. They had not come to take. They had come to listen. And the boy was their witness. A single breath could decide life or fire. The cattle stirred behind him, sensing the tension. Even the rooster stayed quiet. Somewhere in the distance, a crow called once, then silence again. The boy stepped forward. The cowboy did not. They waited for him to speak. The plains had been cruel that week. No rain, no breeze, just the crushing weight of sky and heat pressing down like God's own punishment. Buzzards hovered low, drunk on the scent of decay, circling over broken ridges and dry gulches. Tom Mercer rode slow along the cattle trail, rifle across his saddle and thoughts heavy as the sun. He wasn't looking for company, wasn't looking for trouble, just pushing strays back toward the creek when he saw the movement, small, sudden, and wrong. Beneath a crooked salt bush near Dead Mare Hollow, something shifted. He reined in, watched, waited. A coyote? No, too small. He slid off the horse boots, crunching the brittle earth rifle, aim nerves tight. And then he saw it, a boy. No older than 7, skin sun-cracked, ribs clawing out from the chest like prison bars, black hair matted with blood, lips blistered white. The child didn't flinch, didn't blink, just looked at him, eyes deeper than any well in Texas. "Where's your people?" Tom asked, kneeling low. The boy didn't speak, couldn't. Only a ragged breath escaped. Around him the soil was streaked with red, not fresh, but still sticky. Buzzards had been nearby. Tom saw boot prints, 2-3 sets heading east, one small set veering off. Raiders, maybe, or deserters. Either way, whoever left him had no intent to return. Tom reached for his canteen, dripped water into the boy's mouth. The child coughed, then clung to his wrist with surprising strength. There was something in those fingers, desperation, yes, but also trust. Foolish trust, the kind you bury young in this land. Tom looked around once more. Nothing but heat haze and silence. "Damn it," he muttered. He wrapped the boy in his saddle blanket, tied him behind the horse, and rode back home, slow, careful. That night, as coyotes howled and barn owls screamed, Tom sat by the fire and spoon-fed the child broth made from bone and onion. The boy slept, curled on old hay, fevered but breathing. No words came. Not then. Only silence. Tom didn't ask questions. Not yet. He'd buried his own son 5 winters ago, cut down in a Comanche raid while gathering wood. Found the small body 2 miles from the cabin. Eyes still open, hands clawed toward the sky. His wife had never recovered. Left with the dawn one morning and never came back. Since then, Tom spoke to no one but cattle and wind. But this boy, he was no ghost. He was warm, real, and terribly alone. The next morning, Tom found the boy outside, staring at the creek. He still hadn't spoken, but he was standing, breathing stronger, eating more. There was a scar on his shoulder shaped like a crescent, too clean to be an accident. Tom didn't press. Not yet. He just nodded. The boy nodded back. That night, while the boy slept, Tom dreamed of wolves, hundreds of them circling the barn, their eyes glowing red. When he woke, he found a single eagle feather stuck in the latch of his gate. No wind had placed it there. Someone had come, and someone was watching. By the time the 3rd sun rose over the prairie, the boy could walk. Not far, not steady, but enough to feed the chickens with Tom's old tin scoop and carry a cup of water back from the creek without spilling it. He still hadn't said a word, but his silence was full of memory of pain, of something Tom couldn't name. The The scar on his shoulder shone red in the morning light, and now Tom saw another just under the ribs like the point of a knife had kissed bone. Whoever left the boy out there hadn't just abandoned him. They'd tried to end him, and failed. Tom watched him from the porch, coffee cooling in his tin hand, resting near the rifle leaning against the doorframe. It was the third night when the old fear returned, sharp and sudden like a needle under the skin. A single boot print near the barn. Fresh, deep, facing the door. No horse, no other sign. Just that print and the feather tied to the latch now gone. He found his rifle unloaded. He hadn't left it that way. The boy was asleep, curled tight in the hay, his small hands twitching like he was fighting ghosts in his dreams. Tom stood over him a long while, wondering who had touched the rifle, wondering why the gate hadn't creaked. That's when the thought crept in like a snake beneath floorboards. Maybe the boy was bait. Maybe whoever had marked him with those scars was still nearby, watching, waiting. Comanche sometimes left children behind to draw in settlers. Let pity do the trapping. Could be a test, or worse, a trick. But when Tom looked at the boy again, pale and breathing soft, he saw not a snare but a soul. A child without a home, without a name. Still the old wound inside him itched. He remembered his son's face the morning they found him. Remembered the blood, the split lip, the small hand still clutching a stick like it had done any good. Could he help this boy? And still call himself a father to the one he lost? That night he sat in the rocker on the porch, rifle across his lap, eyes on the dark horizon. The stars above didn't blink. He drank nothing. Just listened to wind, to coyotes, to hoofbeats that never came. The next morning he hitched the mule and rode into Cutter's Bend. He needed salt oats and new boots. At the trading post, old Samuel Pritchard eyed him like a wolf. "You seen the smoke east of the basin?" Tom nodded. "I seen it." "Comanche again," the man said. "They're moving west." Tom didn't reply. Didn't say he found a boy with their markings. Didn't say the boy was in his barn right now eating boiled beans. Didn't say the boy wore a necklace with a carved bear tooth, something only given to children of chiefs. "You see any of 'em, shoot first," Samuel warned. "Ain't no sense taking chances." Tom left without saying a word. On the ride back, the question gnawed at him like hunger. If he kept the boy, fed him, healed him, he risked everything. If the tribe came and found him harboring one of their own, they might take it as theft. Or worse, if the settlers found out, they'd call him traitor. Maybe worse. There was no middle road. Not here. Not now. He stopped his mule near the old dead tree by Widow's Hill, where the plains opened wide enough to see the world bleed into sky. He dismounted. Looked out. "What would you have done?" he muttered, thinking of his wife. Thinking of the boy she bore him, the child now buried beneath a cedar plank, and prayers that never got answered. He didn't hear the hawk at first, but it screamed once high above, and the wind shifted. When he turned back, he saw the boy standing at the crest of the hill behind him, barefoot and watching. Not afraid, just waiting. He didn't ask how the child had followed him so far. He didn't scold, just stared. And the boy raised one hand, same as he'd done under the salt bush. Not in threat, in trust. That night, Tom built a second bed in the barn, gave the boy his son's old blanket, laid his own rifle where the boy could see it. He made bread from scratch, handed it to the boy warm. The child ate slow, savoring every crumb. Tom spoke once. "Ain't no promises out here," he said, "but you're safe tonight." The boy didn't answer, but he didn't look away. That was the night Tom knew. He'd chosen mercy, even if it killed him. The prairie never gave warnings, only signs, and signs had begun to whisper. On the fifth morning, Tom found chicken feathers scattered across the porch, white ones, cleanly plucked, not a drop of blood. Chickens still alive, coop still locked, nothing stolen, just feathers like a silent calling card. The boy saw them too. He stood in the doorway, bare feet on splintered wood, his gaze not on the feathers but on the distance where ridges met sky. His hand twitched once, then fell still. Tom spoke low. "You know what this means." The boy didn't nod, but he didn't need to. That night the wind changed. Colder, sharper, like it carried secrets from another world. Coyotes howled less. The owls stopped altogether. And when Tom stepped outside before dawn to check the mule, he found hoofprints circling the barn. 2 horses, maybe 3. Light riders watching. No sign of entry, just their tracks. And Tom's rifle moved again. It had been laid flat beneath the window. Now it stood against the post, upright, like someone had considered using it. The boy stayed close that day. Not scared, but silent in a new way. Not the silence of emptiness, the silence of memory. He stood near the fire, carving into a strip of leather with a piece of broken metal. Shapes Tom didn't recognize, symbols maybe, or a message. On the 6th day, Tom returned from mending the east fence to find a bundle tied to the barn door. Wrapped in rabbit hide, it held a dried gourd, a black feather, and a strip of skin too small to be animal. The boy saw it and his eyes darkened. Not fear. Recognition. Tom burned the bundle, didn't ask, didn't want to know. The next morning the creek ran red. Not blood-iron clay washed down from the hills by a sudden storm in the night, but it looked like blood. And it stank. The boy refused to drink it. Instead, he scooped water from the rain barrel. That night, he moved his blanket to the loft above the horses, closer to the roof, a better view of the hills. Tom didn't stop him. The barn felt tighter now, like the walls were listening. On the 7th day, Tom went to the grave behind the cabin, his son's resting place. He knelt, pulled weeds, cleared dust from the stone. He looked toward the boy, now crouched by the fire, sketching in dirt with a stick. Something about his posture, so alert, reminded Tom of the way deer freeze before a rifle cracks. That evening, just before dusk, a shadow passed along the ridge. Not a cloud, not a bird, a rider, then another, then more. No thunder of hooves, no dust trail, just forms against firelight sky. Tom counted 6, maybe 7, then they vanished into the dark. The boy did not flinch. He stood, climbed the fence, walked to the edge of the pasture, raised both hands, palms open, then lowered them slow. A gesture, a signal, to them. Or for himself, Tom didn't ask. That night he loaded every round he had, set the rifle by the door, left a lantern burning low, casting long shadows. He sat in the rocker again, the boy curled in hay, still silent. But at midnight he whispered something, a name, not in English, not in any tongue Tom knew. But it hung in the air like smoke, faint but impossible to ignore. At dawn the sound came. Hoofbeats, slow, steady, too many to count, like thunder rolling in reverse. The boy stood before the door, eyes wide open, face calm. Tom stepped beside him. Through the cracks in the barn wood they saw it, a line of riders stretching across the field. Feathers high, faces painted, weapons sheathed but visible. 200 warriors, all mounted, all waiting. At the front a man dismounted, tall broad scars down his cheek like claws from some ancient beast. He looked not at Tom but at the boy, said nothing, raised one hand. The boy stepped forward, between them and the barn alone. Tom's hand hovered near the rifle, then dropped. This wasn't his fight, not yet. Not unless it had to be. The man nodded once. The boy nodded back, then turned to Tom. Not afraid, not pleading, just steady. The way a river looks before flood. Then he walked forward barefoot, leaving only small tracks in the dust. The boy stopped 5 paces from the front warrior. Dust swirled at his ankles, caught in the dawn light like smoke from a dying fire. Around him the 200 riders remained still. No chant, no drum. Just silence thick as pine sap. Tom stood in the barn doorway, both hands at his sides, his rifle leaning forgotten against the wall. The leader stepped forward. His face, though worn and war-stained, held no anger, only weight. He crouched before the boy, placed one palm on the child's chest, the other on his own heart. Then he spoke. Not loud, not in English. But Tom heard a name repeated 3 times. The boy's name. Real and sacred. With it came understanding like a blow to the gut. This child wasn't just a survivor, he was kin to power. Blood of a chief. Maybe even heir. And then came the second blow. From behind the lead warrior stepped another man, older, gaunter eyes sunken deep. He carried a long pipe carved with eagle talons and fire symbols. and across his neck hung from sinew was something that turned Tom's veins cold, a brass wedding band. Bent scorched at the edge, Tom knew it like he knew his own face. It had belonged to his wife, the one who vanished after their son's death. The man saw him watching, lifted the ring, held it up for all to see. The boy turned eyes wide, looked between the ring and Tom, then back at the man, and his lip trembled. Just once. Tom staggered forward, breath caught. "Where'd you get that?" he whispered, though no one would understand. But the boy did. He pointed not at the man with the ring, but at Tom, then at the sky, then back to the ground, drawing a wide circle in the dust. The tall warrior stepped aside. Another stepped forward. A woman, young, but her eyes told of old sorrow. She laid something at the boy's feet, a piece of cloth, white with red stitching, Tom's wife's stitching. The initials M.M. Maggie Mercer. She'd sewn that pattern for their son the winter before he died. It had been missing ever since she disappeared. Tom fell to his knees. The world tilted. He stared at the cloth, then at the boy, then at the man with the ring. The elder spoke again, this time slowly, pointed to the boy, then to Tom, then ran a finger across his own throat. The gesture was clear. He saw it. The boy had witnessed something no child should. And the elder was warning Tom, or accusing, or both. The warriors parted. Another figure stepped forward, this one limping, holding his side wrapped in dark hide. He pulled down his scarf, a face torn by fire, one eye white and blind. And when he spoke, Tom understood just one word: Maggie. Tom's heart stopped. The man pointed to the boy, then made a sweeping gesture across the horizon. Then to Tom. Then back to the boy. The truth unraveled like a snake shed skin. The child wasn't abandoned by his people. He'd been running from death, from men who wore boots, not moccasins. The scars weren't tribal. They were settlers' steel, Tom's people, perhaps even men from Cutter's Bend. That was why the boy hadn't spoken. He'd seen who did it. And they weren't Comanche. They were white, raiders, or worse, cowboys wearing friendly faces. Tom staggered back, hands trembling. "No," he whispered, but the boy looked straight at him, then pointed to his own throat, then to the ring, then to the fire pit beside the barn. There Tom saw what he hadn't noticed before, a faint mark in the ash. The letter M. Maggie. The boy had drawn it the night before. He hadn't been watching for riders. He'd been remembering her, crying for her because she had saved him, because she had died doing it. The pieces fell like thunder. His wife had not left him. She'd gone east, found the boy, tried to shield him, tried to hide him, but someone found them first, left her dead, left the boy bleeding, and the one who returned the ring had taken it from her body, or from the men who had. And now they wanted justice, but not the kind carved in vengeance. They wanted truth, witness, and the boy was the only one left who could speak it. Suddenly the lead warrior turned, walked past the boy, approached Tom, stopped within arm's reach. They stood eye to eye, man to man. The warrior held up a pouch. From it he poured red dust into his hand, blew it once. The wind carried it between them, then he stepped back, waited. It was a test, a choice. Accept the dust, speak the truth, or deny it and become the lie. Tom looked at the boy, looked at the ring, then at the cloth on the ground. His throat burned. He stepped forward, knees weak, reached out, then paused. The boy raised his hand again, the same way he had under the salt bush, the same way he had when the warriors first arrived, not in fear, in hope, trust, again. Tom took the dust, rubbed it across his chest, and the warriors bowed their heads, except one, the scarred man with the blind eye. He stared at the boy, then at Tom, and did not bow. The air held still like breath before a storm. Not a crow cawed, not a horse shifted. 200 warriors stood silent as stone, their gazes fixed on the boy who now stood at the center of the clearing between his barn and their blades. Tom watched him, his throat tight, rifle still untouched at the doorway. His heart pounded like a war drum. That boy, barely 7, held the truth in his chest like a loaded pistol. He could speak a name. He could point a finger. And it would all burn down. The boy's eyes swept across the crowd of mounted warriors. He looked to the scarred man with the blind eye, the one who hadn't bowed, the one who had spoken his mother's name like ash in the mouth. Then he looked to Tom, to the dust rubbed across his chest, to the scar on his hand from the burn he'd gotten stoking the fire for the boy's soup. The boy's lips parted. Tom took one step forward slow. He didn't raise his hands, didn't kneel, just stood bareheaded under the rising sun. "Speak it," the scarred man growled in English this time. The crowd shifted. A stir of reins, creak of leather. The boy looked to the dirt at his feet, then to the cloth embroidered with MM. He bent, picked it up, held it tight. The scarred man dismounted, moved toward the child. "Say who left your mother dead," he snarled. "Say what you saw." The boy turned to face him, no fear, just flame. He opened his mouth. A hawk cried overhead. A gust of wind lifted the dust into the air, and the boy spoke, but no one heard it, not clearly, just one word lost in the rising howl of prairie wind. The warriors leaned forward. The scarred man froze. "What did he say?" someone muttered. Tom's breath caught in his throat. The boy looked to him. A single tear ran down the child's cheek, but no more words came. The scarred man's hand moved to his knife. "Speak again," he hissed. The lead warrior raised his palm. The crowd held still. The boy pointed, not at Tom, not at the scarred man, but beyond them both toward the far hills, toward nothing, or everything, toward the place where ghosts go to rest. The warriors shifted, confused, waiting. One rider, dismounted, moved to the child, knelt beside him, whispered in the old tongue. The boy shook his head, looked up at the sun, then down at the dirt, then at Tom again. Something passed between them, some silent thing forged, not by words, but by pain shared. The lead warrior turned to Tom, spoke slow. He knows the truth, but truth cannot be forced. It must walk. Tom stepped forward. "Then let him walk," he said, "and I'll walk beside him." The scarred man's lip curled. "You," he spat, "you hide her blood in your barn. You steal the child of chiefs." The boy raised his hand. Again, open palm. Silence returned. The lead warrior looked to the others. "He chooses the barn." The words dropped like stones. Tom didn't understand, not fully, but the warriors did. One by one they turned their horses, no signal, no command, just instinct. As if some ancient code had been obeyed, they rode slow in lines, disappearing into the dust. All but the scarred man. He stood still, watching, waiting. The boy turned away from him, walked to Tom, stood beside him. No words, just a stance, a choice. The scarred man's hand tightened on the hilt of his knife. "He lies for you," he said. "He protects your guilt." Tom stared back. Or maybe he said, voice low, "He protects something bigger than revenge." The man stepped forward. "This isn't over," Tom nodded. "No, it ain't." The boy took Tom's hand. The scarred man mounted, rode off into the west. Tom and the boy stood alone, the barn casting long shadows in the morning light. The cloth still clutched in the boy's hand, the ring still dangling from the warrior's neck now 1,000 yards away, and the truth still hanging in the air like smoke. So now the prairie asks if the boy knew the killer's face but chose silence. What would you have done? There's a silence that follows mercy heavier than the roar of vengeance. That boy, standing in the dust with a scar on his side and fire in his eyes, chose something most grown men never do. He chose not to spill more blood. He remembered his mother's hand, the bread in the cowboy's barn, the warmth of a fire when death had nearly claimed him. And he let those memories speak louder than fear. Sometimes justice ain't about the sharpness of a blade or the swiftness of a bullet. Sometimes it's in the quiet moment when a soul chooses not to become the very thing that broke it. Out on the prairie where graves sink low and names vanish with the wind, a man's legacy ain't carved in stone, it's written in the hearts of those who survive him. The cowboy never asked for redemption, but he gave kindness when he could have walked away. And that kindness echoed in a child's silence, in a tribe's restraint, in a truth left unspoken but understood. Out here where law rides slow and grief rides fast, the strongest man ain't the one who fires first. It's the one who can live with what he didn't do.